Yeah, but the thing is, it's like what happened somewhere. Muslims stopped investing into research and critical thinking. It wasn't always the case. In different times there was, people were suppressed always at different times. But I think now you can see that we have collapsed because all that we can do is look back at a great time, which tells you that we are not now. We know it. We have lost, but we don't know where we lost. That's the problem. And I think it was like centuries and centuries, and men dominated all of the sciences and all of the philosophy and all of the Hadith sciences. So they hijacked, and then their interpretations got to be, I think, dominant. So, for example, we were listening to one woman and she was translating the verse about how mostly people think it translates as men have like charge of a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way I can imagine a lot of maybe male-dominated societies think like that, is that men, because they, because of physical, their physical abilities and also financial, they have like a certain higher status than women. But first of all, it's nothing to do with like status, as in one is up top of the other, like man is better than woman. It's just saying that, one, that they have they have to look after the one that's in their responsibility, yeah? And there's almost like a kind of, you're looking after that thing in terms of financially, spiritually, emotionally. So it's not that you're in charge as in like authority, but more as in it's a responsibility. And also there's a certain part of the verse that's not gender specific, so it's not even, it allows for certain gender fluidity. So that, okay, maybe the dominant view is that the men have caretaking over the woman, but then because it's not so gender specific, it doesn't mean that sometimes that the woman has more finances as the man. Because we know anyway, the traditions are correct about Khadija, that she was the main breadwinner and she was the main caretaker, not the prophet. So it's natural that for whatever's under your care, to look after it spiritually, physically, and financially. But because the men were dominating with their scholarship, with their knowledge, with their interpretation, over time the verse only got to mean that men have charge of a woman. And then also the idea came through that the men have, like, the way that they translated and understood the verse was also kind of like a status thing. That men are somehow more superior than women. So I think mostly there are like little sparks in Islamic history, like that woman that did the university, some Muslim women scholars now, but there's always like an exception. It's not the rule. It's like an exception. But like the Scott, not lost, but yeah, for example, like I can never say the name properly, but the Mutalizites, the philosophers who were more in favour of reason and independent reasoning, and sometimes they favoured independent reasoning over Quran. So eventually their point of view lost and actually got out of favour. So that's why you don't find that particular train of thought anymore. And obviously not many people, like there was a lot of scholars, philosophers who sort of had they all had certain ideas in mind. So they're all grouped under that umbrella. But no one really talks about them, no one knows them anymore because they were sort of written out of history. So a lot of history Islamic history is just like any other history. It's not like special history or, sacred history or anything. It's like any history. It's written by the winners, not the losers. So there's lots of things that were lost, a lot of interpretations that were lost, and a lot of schools that were lost that, we're not allowed to talk about or we're not allowed to research into, especially if you're in certain countries. So, there was a lot of voices that you could say have been lost. And still Muslims are very far behind, and they only think of 4 schools of thought, they only think of certain personalities, but they don't understand that you only think of those ones because you've been conditioned to only think about those ones, and you think Islam is like a linear path from prophet to now, but it's not. It's like taking so many paths that have been lost now, and it's been very messy. But we like to just teach ourselves a very simplistic history that everyone agrees on without too much controversy. I'm not even talking about the whole Shia thing, just generally. Like, there's a lot of things that have been hidden and tucked away.
Shia thinking when you're right.
No, it's like people think, because they have different ideas about the early history of this and that happened. I don't mean that. I mean, like other things as well that happened that have been now just, completely lost. Like different schools, different scholars, different groups that came and went, and no one talks about them. Apart from maybe some scholar of religion in the West who is researching them. But in the actual Muslim countries, they don't research into these things. No, you should never be afraid of learning anything. So I think, I don't know if it's still true anymore, but if you have someone that's, for example, really into evolution, it's like, that's something that you're not really allowed to look into.
They will do that to you.
Yeah,
They put the finger in the ear.
To research into it.
I'm not listening to this stuff.
But they don't understand that even before like Darwin or any of these people came, there was actually one Muslim, I don't know if it's Arab or Persian scientist, who actually came up with ideas similar to evolution hundreds of years ago. I think his name was Al-Jahiz or something like that. So he actually was one of the first ones who came up with idea of evolution before Darwin. It's like, why? Because they were researching, because they were thinking, there was patronage, so people were given money and they were able to do research, able to, independent reasoning and thinking about the world that isn't happening anymore. But I'm sure a lot of parents, and like if they're in the UK or Europe and America, if they get towards that evolution part, they're sort of told, okay, just learn it for the sake of learning it, but then don't believe it.
I would say that to kids.
So like my wife would do that to our kids. So, but it's like, why not?
Okay, let them think what they're gonna do. How they do so many things. So what?
No, but it's not that. It's like we should be always, and I think a truly intellectual is always open.
Okay, you know what? I agree with this.
It's that. It's like you should always be open. I think if because that's what means. That's what keeps you growing and learning. If you keep an open mind. It doesn't mean that you agree with everything, but sometimes you do in areas where you maybe least expect it. You should never close your mind off. And I think a lot of the times people are quite fragile in their faith. That's why they don't want to rock the boat, because it's very fragile. So they don't want to look too deep into things because they're worried that if they look too deep, they might lose their faith.
Shajarat al-Dur, 13th century.
Yeah. Well, there's another guy, Jahaz or something like that, Jiyaz, I think. Or Jahaz, Jahiz, something like that. Well, you maybe find that there's a couple actually, because at that time they were all looking into biology, chemistry, astronomy.
There's like a natural path to actually look into that deeper if you think like.
Arban's Lehi.
Yeah. So there's so many, but even if you look at a lot of the stars in the sky, they all have Arab names. Because I remember there was one. Again, it's a hadith about women should never be leaders in terms of leading states or countries like that. Otherwise, they will be.
Benazir was the first from Muslim, non-Muslim world.
Otherwise, they will be destroyed or something like that. But again, it goes against the spirit of the Quran. Even at the time of Suleiman, one of the most powerful rulers was the Queen of Sheba.
Oh.
But the Quran doesn't condemn her for being a queen or something like that.
Yeah, it's actually interesting.
It's like these things about all gender, it's all normal. But our scholars made it everything a huge deal.
I think that was a control. It was not scholar. The scholar who can be bought is not a scholar.
I think some people believe this. I think
people believe because they actually trust Mufti Sahib. Please tell us what is the truth.
I know I lost my faith in humanity. The one time I heard this scholar say that making snowmen was haram.
Making?
Snowmen.
Wow. What?
Yeah. That's when I lost my faith in humanity. Sorry?
I can understand where it's coming from.
Did you write that post on? Is that right?
Dhoni is that scholar. He says I can understand where it's coming from.
Of course, he's coming from the idea that you can make images, you can make idols. That's where he's coming from.
Yeah?
This will be another one. But it makes sense to his logic.
That's the thing.
He has no phone. He doesn't make pictures. He never uses camera. So it is for him.
He never uses a mirror.
Oh no. How did you think about this when I sent a sheep to
Faisal was celebrating Eid, so she sent a little, the emoji that's a sheep.
Idubari?
And she was like, haram, you can't use that because it's an animal.
And it has a picture.
And it has
It's
a
an
picture.
image. It's an image of
So
it.
this is the problem that we are stuck on extremely small things. That are nothing, first of all, nothing to do with Islam. I remember, I think there was something stupid about it. I saw textbooks in Iran. They had the eyes cut out.
Oh, that's what a living being has eyes.
Yeah.
So that eyes can actually is like that's haram tripped. Normally, what do you want a blind?
Yeah, so all the sheep were blind, all the cat color.
You're not understanding. You have to put bananas in the direction of Qibla.
Oh, yes. So
You guys
that's
are
what we're
missing
dealing
out.
with. That's what we're dealing with.
The whole Pakistan cannot sleep with their legs towards Qibla.
Yes, true. I do.
It's a fear that even though you carry keys in like, oh, this room, I was like, no, that's enough.
So unbelievable.
No, we all grew up like this.
No, but Zone is like Joju. I grew out of it.
Anyway, good chat, put it off. The Muslims or the Arabs and the Persians did, like they were translating all of like the Greek texts and the Roman texts into Arabic. So they actually preserved a lot of the Greek and Roman knowledge and philosophy and like these things. So they were not like they obviously were building on all of the knowledge that came before because they came across those manuscripts and books when they went into like Syria and Turkey and like the Mediterranean. So like it's known that they were translating and then obviously using that knowledge but then building on it and then so they didn't create it from zero. They were, projected to.
So it is like I take in a lot of like even in Ottoman Empire, even with very so many caliphs, women stood up and they made a lot of legislation and how they were best politicians. They were the first university was created by I don't know where I was studying it. It was the woman, the first nurse nursing thing came out. It was the first Muslim woman who started doing the nursing. So